Well, hey everybody, it's Sandy, and welcome back to my channel dedicated to helping you advocate for your own health, one topic at a time. I just couldn't see any more poignant beginning to this video than to show that picture. That was yesterday. I'm recording this video on Tuesday, January 5th, so that picture was Monday, January 4th, when I received the first dose of the Moderna vaccine. I'm wondering if I'm going to become emotional just talking about it on video because it really has been a very emotional experience for me. So I want to tell you guys about, how I'm feeling and getting the actual vaccine, and I will, and I'm planning to do that again after the second shot, which I'm actually a little bit scared of. But first I want to talk to you about the circumstances, like being able to get the shot. That was a whole big drama that I think really contributed to how emotional I became when I finally arrived. Probably everyone has read by now that all different places are doing this differently in the way of how they prioritize who gets vaccinated. And it seems to me that there are just glitches everywhere. The supply is just nowhere near the demand, and it's just a mess in a lot of places. And from what I'm seeing, it almost doesn't matter what method they're using. And I think in the United States, we have this particular issue where, we're a great big country. We're a huge republic. And in a lot of ways, that serves us very well. But it sure doesn't make us nimble. We're not nimble at all. And I'm just going to tell you about the problem in my area. In my state, they're now offering in the first tier healthcare providers plus people 65 and over. So if anyone's asking me, yeah, I think 65 and over is a huge demographic, and it was probably a very ambitious undertaking to try to get everybody 65 and older plus the healthcare workers. So that already makes for a lot of log jamming. And then we had this really unfortunate problem that impacted me along with many other healthcare providers, which is that it didn't seem that there was any planning for the fact that lots of healthcare providers aren't in hospital systems. The plan that got put in place first in my state was that healthcare providers will get it from their hospitals, and people 65 and older would be going to the county health departments. Now, don't even get me started on that, because like the county health department really, I mean, I'm not knocking, maybe some people work in the county health department, whatever, but it doesn't seem that it's set up to be like a super nimble warp speed kind of operation. My experience with county health departments is very limited, but I don't know, I kind of wondered if we would have been better off with the DMV, because that turned out to be a huge cluster. So the very first day, people were able to get online and make appointments at their county health department to get vaccinated. Servers went down, phone lines went down. I mean, it was just a mess. Online, they were set up where people would go through and register, and then they'd have to click on a time spot. And as soon as they clicked on something that was available, it opened up a window that said it was already gone. The systems set up were by no means able to endure the strain of the masses of people that were going to be wanting to use them. The other issue is, of course, the oversight that I mentioned, where, not all healthcare workers work in hospitals. So the hospitals got the vaccines and immediately started taking care of their own staff, employees, and lots of healthcare providers then thought that we could go to the health department and get online and compete with the same system I just described. So this oversight resulted in a huge number of frontline healthcare workers scrambling around trying to get vaccines. I think that non-hospital healthcare workers are probably at least 50% of that workforce. I mean, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. Think about all the private offices, doctors who work in their offices, ambulatory surgical settings, dentists, dental hygienists, freestanding imaging centers. I mean, it was just outrageous. It was so disheartening and discouraging. So like last week when I was on the phone, you would literally stay on hold with some of these places for an hour and a half, and then you'd get on a phone call, and then you'd have to call another place, and it was another hour and a half. And I was ultimately just told, look, this isn't going to happen. So, I sat back, I put my feelers out, and I started talking with my professional association. I also started talking with some people of other professions, and I was so fortunate because I got put in contact with a local physician. She's an allergist, immunologist in town. And she took up this cause for lots of us. Now, our associations got involved, and, of course, this problem bubbled up to the surface pretty quickly. At the time you're in it, it seems just insurmountable. So I got a message over the weekend letting me know that one of our large hospital systems had opened up its COVID vaccination schedule to non-hospital healthcare workers, that we could just make an appointment and go on in there. I was so grateful. And I think I got the news like right when they started this, because I got on that link and there were so many appointments available. This is like so not my luck normally, but I got an appointment first thing on Monday morning. That was yesterday. And I went in to get the vaccine. Since then, there's been a press conference from our Department of Emergency Management and our governor, and a lot more healthcare workers who are outside the hospital system are going in and getting vaccinated. So I actually let my dentist's office know. They didn't know a thing about it. And I think of dentistry as really pretty high risk. That alone was emotional. And when I secured the appointment, I actually wept. I mean, I started to tear up and I actually wept. I just am so grateful to the many people who helped to get that done and raise awareness or pressure or both, probably both, to see that the healthcare providers in outpatient settings have access to vaccines. Just to give you a sense of how bad this looked, and the optics on this I found so offensive. We have surgery centers in town where the surgeons who work there, because they also have admitting privileges at a hospital because they have to, had been vaccinated the very first week. And their entire staff at their surgery center, every single one of the nurses and the anesthesia providers, not vaccinated. I really found it offensive. So I'm just so glad that we've got an avenue to square this away. And it seems like they're going to be able to ramp up quickly because they do have a very efficient system in place. So on to my experience yesterday in getting my vaccine. So I decided that in my usual thorough manner, I was going to get there really early because I was all prepared for a glitch, a problem, something to iron out, no parking spaces, who knows. So I got there very early, and I was so surprised at how smoothly this thing ran. Now, the hospital systems are restricting visitation here, as you'd imagine. So there are people standing in the vestibule when you arrive, and they ask you right away, what are you doing here? And when I said I was there to get a COVID vaccine, the first thing they said is, how old are you? And I thought, oh, thank you. But anyway, so I said, I'm 55, but I'm a non-hospital healthcare worker. And they said, right this way. And there really was staff just everywhere. They had everything set up like a fine-tuned piano. As soon as I rounded a corner where the sign-in was taking place, a staff member actually greeted me there and said, are you here for a vaccine? And I said, I'm really early. And they're like, no problem, just go. And it was just moving so fast that it really didn't matter. So the first thing they had me do was sign a consent that was already laid out for me at a table. And they let me know that the pen there was a freshly sanitized pen. Filled that out, handed it to somebody, and all she did was turn the opposite way and scan a room. There was like a whole room, like a huge classroom full of little stations set up, little tables. And she said, oh, go right over there. That one's empty. So you head on over to the table. They ask a couple questions, check the consent, and in no time the shot was in the arm. Now, it happened so fast that I didn't get out my camera and take my selfie while it was going on. And it's a good thing because I'm going to get to that story in a minute. I actually had lost my phone. Oh my God. But I did get emotional right there in the chair when they started to give me the vaccine. I just couldn't help it. I started to cry. I was so grateful. I wasn't crying because I was scared. People ask me, is it because you were scared or something hurt? And no, I was just overcome with the gratitude and the hope I have now for this whole country and the world that maybe this is the beginning of the end. Some of you already saw the picture that I posted at the beginning of this video because I also posted it in the Sandy's DIY Health Advocacy Facebook group. That picture in the Facebook group got so many kind comments along with some questions, and I'm just so grateful. But that's how I captioned the picture in the Facebook group. I said, the beginning of the end. I'm really hoping. So then on to the two things that proved to be a little more challenging. One is they want you to wait around about 15 minutes. I think if you've had a history of severe allergic reactions, they watch you for 30. So for that, they had a whole bunch of chairs set up. It was sort of like movie theater style, and you just had to kind of try to distance yourself because the chairs themselves weren't distanced. So you'd have to leave space, like leave several chairs in between you and the next person. That room started to get a little bit crowded. And I started to feel like, I'm almost better off like leaving. I can watch myself or something, or find out, sit in the lobby of the hospital. Somebody will help me if I become anaphylactic, because I just started to feel like it wasn't safe just being in this really crowded place, right? Can you just imagine like getting COVID, going to get your vaccine? So at one point I said something to one of the staffers and they pointed me out a door, and there was a little hallway there with more chairs lining the hallway, and that hallway was relatively empty. That was in the nick of time because right at that point I noticed that somebody in the room that was more crowded had actually had their mask, of course, under the nose, like that's the place for this. Whatever. So I sat down in that corridor for a little while, and it was pretty empty. There was somebody maybe catty cornered to me several feet away, and she did the same thing with the mask. And I actually said something. I was like, "Excuse me, put your mask back up." But then along came another party, and they decided that they were going to sit in that corridor and have snacks. They started pulling out water bottles and things. I was just like, "No, I'm done now." So I decided that this has been 15 minutes, and if it hasn't, it's been close enough, and I left. So I don't think it was the worst thing in the world. I think they're going to get better and better at it. And I do think overall they were pretty good, especially at the masks. They had a lot of staff there, and really these were just a couple of people, but I'm just so vigilant that I think that really stuck out for me. But certainly the vast majority of people were completely compliant, staying apart, distancing themselves, and wearing masks. I really have to give kudos to the healthcare system here in town that offered this to those of us who work in the outpatient settings. I am eternally grateful. I'm sure they'll continue to hone it. And they say they're actually going to be working on drive-through sites as they ramp up. So I'm really excited about that. Okay, so the other thing was like I lost my phone. So they told me to sit down for that 15 minutes, and I didn't see a clock on the wall. So I decided to go get out my phone, and I can't find it. And I thought, that's funny. I must have left it in my car. Oh, well. So I had to estimate when that 15 minutes had gone by, or like I said, when somebody had gotten out of water to drink, that's when I was done. And I left the building, went out to my car, no phone. And I thought to myself, I know exactly what happened. When I put my purse through the conveyor belt at security when I walked in the door, my guess is it fell out because I keep my phone in an external pocket of my bag, and the bag is large enough when it's upright that it has to lay down sideways in the conveyor belt. Well, sure enough, that's what happened. So I go walking back in the hospital, right? And I said, I think I lost my phone. They had to ask the people in the vestibule to let me back in. And then the person manning security said, yes, you did, but I just turned it over to so-and-so and I have to call for it. And it was just this whole big thing. So I got my phone back, and that was, of course, an extra 15 minutes hanging around the hospital lobby, which is far less crowded than the waiting area for after you got your shot. So I was fine with that. And I went out and I took that selfie in my car. Okay, so nothing was taken at the time of the vaccine. I'm going to try to get it together a little bit better when it's time for the second shot. Now, as to how I'm feeling, I felt like nothing immediately. It was just the tiniest needle prick, and that's it. I didn't feel anything most of the day, but I'd say about 8 hours in, I started to get tired. And when it was time to go to bed at night, I was just really tired, like just very tired. Nothing, not achy, flu-like, not sick tired. I just felt really tired. Once I got in bed, I turned on my right side to go to sleep, and that's the arm I had injected. And then I realized that my arm really was quite sore. I hadn't realized it before that. It kind of felt a little heavy, but it was really sore. So I really couldn't lay on that side. It's still somewhat sore today. And if I lay down on that side, I can feel it almost feels like a little lump. So I'm sure it's a little swollen in the tissue, but really nothing to speak of. I am getting geared up mentally about the second shot. That's in a month, because since I got the Moderna has much more reactogenicity on the second shot, that much more so than the Pfizer. So it's much more common on the second shot with Moderna to have fever, chills, nausea, vomiting, all kinds of people just feel really sick. I mean, a lot of people, like close to half. So, I'll have to just get geared up for that. I'm eternally grateful that I've got the vaccine, so I've got nothing to complain about. I will do a video on that as well. I do hope that there's a lot of messaging out to the public to expect that, or at least to people who are there for the vaccine, because it's just so hard to convince people after the fact that something that's very unpleasant is normal. I think it's always better to tell them first so that when they experience it, it's not scary. I'll let you know how that is. In the meantime, I am going to plan to follow up with some more just general talk about reactions with vaccines. I'm hoping to do a video with an allergist to talk about the rare anaphylactic complications that we've heard about. I do want to know whether it would be helpful if I talk about the difference between allergic reactions, reactogenicity, and other things like that when it comes to vaccines, because I'm concerned that when people have unpleasant reactions to vaccines, it sort of gets put in the category like, oh, the vaccine is dangerous, and people get really scared about it, understandably so. But there's a big difference between a reaction to a vaccine and reactogenicity, allergic reaction. things like that. I'm sober about vaccines. I'm not one of these people that gets every single flu shot. I've done videos on this channel about my nuanced view of vaccines. Yeah, but my view on a vaccine for COVID-19, given the devastating nature of this disease, is not nuanced at all. But I do think it might be helpful to talk more about the expected reactogenicity. So let me know if you guys want me to talk about that some more. And I anticipate doing so because I fully anticipate having a wild ride in a month when I go back for the second injection. So I'd like to close by saying thank you so much for those of you who have subscribed. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, I really hope you'll consider subscribing. I do my channel as a public service, so as those of you who have been watching me know, I don't want to have any room for bias when it comes to people's health. I don't have affiliate links on my channel, but I do want to grow the channel. So please click the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified every time I put up a video, then you'll also click the bell. And please share the content with anybody else who might find it helpful or interesting. Until next time, be well. Bye-bye.